Thank you, Chairman and Secretary. We understand that laws need to be enforced, but your department has a lot of discretion in how you enforce those laws. When raids or apprehensions are carried out at schools and parents are forcefully separated from their children as other children look on, it terrorizes those kids. When raids are carried out at hospitals, people's lives can be put in danger. When they're carried out in courthouses, people may be afraid to show up and offer testimony that could be needed to put bad guys behind bars. But under the Trump administration, there have been numerous examples of raids and apprehensions being carried out in these types of sensitive locations: churches, hospitals, schools, courthouses. Now, I recognize that most of this occurred under your predecessor, before your watch, when you stepped into the role. So now that you're in charge, will you direct the people under you to avoid operations in those kinds of sensitive locations?
First of all, Congressman, I want to thank you for coming out to St. Elizabeth and visiting me. There's not too many members that make that drive, but I hope you got to see a dedicated workforce when you walked in that building and the professionalism that we do every single day on keeping the homeland safe. So when we start talking about sensitive areas, we're not actively patrolling or enforcing in sensitive areas. However, we do serve warrants in those areas, and these are going after the worst of the worst. When we go in there and we're serving the warrants at a hospital, or in fact, I don't think we've ever done it at a church. The only thing that's happened at church is the protester by Don Lemon. But when we start looking at actually what's happening in these sensitive areas, we're pulling it out. Now, courts, I will say in courts, when we go pick the individuals up, we're not raiding the courts. We're picking them up on final orders, meaning that they've already went through all the court systems.
Can I just ask for some clarification on this? So are you saying it's your policy, and again, I'm talking about your tenure, not your predecessor. It's your policy that there won't be operations, apprehensions in these types of sensitive locations unless you're serving a warrant? Unless
it's a felony warrant.
And has this been made clear to everyone working under you? Like, is there, will you put out, have you, or will you put out some sort of a written bulletin?
We have made that we've made that very clear. Tom Homan and I have talked about this. Listen, if people are avoiding us in those areas, we got to go get them. But we're not doing full-scale immigration operations.
So just to reclaim my time, there have been examples of this occurring still. On April 9th, several men were detained at a courthouse in Rancho Cucamonga, California. There was another incident in New York City on May 19th. And as far as we're aware, none of these individuals have been charged with any crimes. There was not a removal order. And so I just want to make sure that what you're saying is filtering down to the people under you. Will you put out some sort of a written bulletin or something to codify this?
We have it out there. Clear. Yeah, and Congressman, in both those cases we looked into, both those cases, there was people that were arrested that didn't have final orders, but there was a person that was with them in both cases that did have final orders. So when we go into a house, for instance, we're serving a judicial warrant, and we go after the person that's there, we check everybody else's immigration policy too.
I appreciate that. My question is, again, so that everyone working under you is clear on the policy, will you put out some kind of a written directive or something just to clarify it?
We'll look into that. I think it's already out.
But I'd like to move to another topic now. So the administration deployed thousands of Border Patrol and ICE officers into American cities, including Minneapolis, Chicago, and Los Angeles. In the chaos that followed, 2 American citizens were killed. Countless other people were seriously injured. Now, I recognize, again, this all happened before your tenure, or much of it happened before your tenure. I asked for the data of how many DHS officers have been disciplined for improper use of force in recent years. And I'll give you credit, because while your predecessor did not respond to my request for information, your office has begun to provide some. But the data is concerning. This is CBP. At the same time that ICE and Border Patrol were engaging in all of these violent conflicts in American cities last year, the number of Border Patrol officers disciplined for improper use of force actually went down dramatically. And in fact, that number 2 there is inflated because one of them was disciplined for failing to bring his firearm to work. The other was a workers' compensation issue, which I assume was misclassified. So can you explain this, and can you explain what you are going to do to ensure that those who do step over the line, those who do act inappropriately, will be held accountable, because this accountability did not exist under your predecessor?
We hold everybody at the highest standard, and if you fail to meet that standard, we will hold you accountable.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because that was not the case under your predecessor. And I think a part of your charge, part of the reason you're sitting here, by the way, is because your predecessor lost the trust of the American people. If you're trying to regain it, you need to show that there will be accountability, just like there is in any other law enforcement office agency in the country when someone does engage in improper use of force. Last question, will you commit to continuing to provide this data, say every 6 months or so, and will you provide it for ICE as well as CBP?
We'll provide it upon request, to say it every 6 months. We get inquiries from you guys constantly,
Okay.
and it is
Still
overwhelming.
waiting on the ICE data. Will you provide the
But
ICE data?
as we get requests on it, we'll try to get to it as fast as possible to you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News. Donate now, or even better, start a monthly contribution today.